We're recording to the cloud.
Yes.
Says recording.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us again. Nice to see you all.
Good to see
And
you.
it was a good. We thought it would be good to share a little bit more about a little more specifics than we've had time for in our meetings to talk about affordable housing in general and a little bit more about North Shore CDC's affordable housing work. So we'll do that today. And as we were developing this slideshow, at the same time, we're preparing to launch our kind of 10 years of impact campaign this year, because North Shore CDC was actually created at the beginning of 2011. So it's been 10 years. And we were created by the merger of two organizations that had been around for kind of 10 and 30 years respectively at the time. But it is it's kind of wild that it's been 10 years. For some of us who've been around for that period of time, it doesn't quite feel that long. But certainly when we go through some of these affordable housing projects that we've worked on, you can get a sense for we're really proud of the projects that we've done, and at the same time they all take a lot of time. So hopefully you'll get a little better sense of the kind of stuff that we've worked on before you met us. Next. So I think you've met all three of us before. Happy to have Felicia and Eileen here today. And we all sort of do very different things, but at the same time work together all the time. And have all been working really actively on, with you all and on our own, on putting together what we hope is the vision for a collaborative project at Tabernacle. And again, our mission is to invest in neighborhoods to create thriving communities. Next. So these are some of the facts that we've put together for our 10 years of impact campaign that sort of speak to affordable housing. We've renovated 21 buildings in the Point neighborhood. We have another 16 on the cusp of being renovated starting later this year. We've doubled our housing portfolio in the last 10 years. We've brought in about $75 million in investment amongst our housing developments in that period of time. But at the beginning of that 10 years, we built 88 new homes in Gloucester, and in Beverly, and are just finishing 30 in Gloucester next month, which we're really excited about. And in our housing portfolio, about 900 people live in those apartments in a given time. I think that's always an interesting number. We never think about it through that lens, but it's a really important lens to think about. Yeah. And we have about 314 apartments in our pipeline, which means projects that we're working on of all different kind of shapes, sizes, and some of those are in concept development. Some of those are already permitted and waiting for funding. We'll talk about some of those in that 314, so you can get a sense of the most current things we've been working on. But you can see we kind of doubled our portfolio, and in the next 5 or 6 years that it takes us to build out that 314, we're gonna close to double it again. So we're excited what that means for the region, and also really for our organization. It's to go from 140 apartments to almost 700 apartments is it's a lot more impact, but it's also a lot more sustainability for us. We're able to afford better systems, and we need better systems, but we were able to afford them more the bigger that we get by having a little bit bigger scale. So we're really excited to get to that day when our housing is more around the 700 mark. And now we can sort of see that from here. All these projects are very real. They go into that 314. So our strategy over the last 10 years has been to renovate everything that the organization owned before us. That was really important. A lot of the buildings were affordable, but hadn't been renovated in 20 plus years. had never really been renovated to the standards that we have now in terms of green building and just quality. That was a really important piece. One of our strategies to do that was to get the Point listed as a National Historic District so that we could get state and federal historic credits for all those buildings. So by the time we're done in 2022, we will have renovated 35 buildings and about 300 apartments using state and federal historic credit. So that's one area we're really proud of. It's brought a lot of investment into those buildings that really collectively make a real difference at a kind of neighborhood level, not to mention the kitchens and baths and all the things that really contribute to quality of life. We also wanted to really strategically acquire some of the more blighted properties in the Point. So in the last 10 years, we've purchased, let me think, about a dozen buildings, over 100 apartments. And these were buildings that were like essentially naturally occurring low-cost housing, but not deed restricted, affordable, in all sorts of stages of disrepair, you know? And so we've really prioritized buying buildings like that, and have made some great progress. Most of those have already been bought and renovated. We have 3 more that we're planning to start renovating hopefully next year. And they've really beefed up our portfolio and also preserved a lot of the neighborhood as affordable in the long run. We also wanted to build some new affordable housing in the Point. Not a lot of new construction has happened there. And we're really excited. We're going to be breaking ground on our first new construction since 2007, I believe. This summer in June, we should start on 2 buildings. There'll be 46 brand new apartments, really modern, really cool, about as green as we can build. Yeah. We also really wanted to build some new affordable housing in other parts of Salem. Before our kind of current team came into place, the CDC had only owned about 145 apartments. All of them were in the Point. And we wanted, for a variety of reasons, we wanted to have more housing in general, but also more housing in other parts of Salem. So we're excited. We have 63 apartments permitted in the historic schools that I think you guys have probably heard about in St. James and Hawthorne Boulevard. Those are all designed and permitted and waiting for money, but those are going to be a great addition to Salem. And then of course, we're really excited to work with you all. And between those 2 projects, we will have, you know, about as much housing outside of the Point as we had in the Point 10 years ago. We're really excited about that and hope that that's a trend that continues. And then finally, we wanted to build more affordable housing in other areas of the North Shore. So I mentioned earlier, we're really excited to be finishing our first project in Gloucester. And we have about 110 apartments in Beverly that were built at this point 8 to 10 years ago. They've been really great, great buildings for us. Next. This kind of just gives you a little summary of like what we have and what we have in the works. Definitely, we have a lot. You know, our core work has always been in Salem, and I think we'll continue to do projects in Salem, but we are really excited about doing more work in other places, probably more in Gloucester, and we think there's a need in lots of communities on the North Shore. I think that will evolve over time. We've talked a lot about, when we've talked about the Tabernacle project, the percentages of area median income. So we just wanted to spend a little more time today, like we'll break down what some of those income limits are, so you can see like real actual household incomes. But we also wanted you to get a sense of like, what kind of housing are we creating? And what we're creating is driven by like the funding programs that are available. To some degree, it's choice, but to a larger degree, it's what resources are out there at the state and federal levels that we can leverage to like bring into the project. You can see that 30% of median income level and the 50% of median income level, those numbers are lower than the 60% of median income level. And that is like really, that's driven by the funding that's out there. Most of the funding that exists in the affordable housing world really like encourages developers to create housing at that 60% of AMI level. Mostly they want us to do 10 or 20% of our housing at 50%. But we often try to do more than that. So it's always a question of how can we bring in, how can we find additional funds and resources to like deepen the affordability? So I think one piece that we're excited about with the Tabernacle project is that we've talked about all of the apartments being at kind of a combination of the 50 and 30 level, which you can see would be, amongst the most deeply affordable that we have. We have a few market rate units in our pipeline. That's really all in the schools project. Each of those buildings has a small number of market rate apartments. And when we were designing that project, we got a lot of feedback in community meetings that people wanted to see some market rate in those buildings. There are lots of people who actually like really want to live in the buildings who wouldn't be eligible. And we thought it would be an interesting thing to try, frankly, to see like, how does this work for us? And does it create a good kind of, system?
Community. Yeah.
We felt like those were the good buildings to try it in, and we might well do that in other cases in the future. Homeless set-asides, this means that like in any given development, we might have some number of apartments where we pre-commit to essentially reserve a certain number of apartments for people or families who were homeless before they became housed with us. That's really what that means. But some of those are targeted at families, and 16 of those 39 are targeted at formerly homeless young people. I guess other than those 16, they're all family. So sometimes that's like 3 apartments, sometimes it's 6 or 8. It's usually like a small number of a bigger total. And those are the kinds of apartments that sometimes we can bring additional subsidy in. So we know that people generally who are coming out of homelessness are at that 30% AMI level. So we can find additional subsidies to support them coming out of homelessness. And when we apply for those funds, we have to kind of describe how we are going to meet those families' like service needs beyond just the roof over their head. And I think that's the kind of thing that North Shore CDC really like believes in. I think it's a true statement that we haven't done a development in the last 15 years that hasn't had at least some homeless set-aside units in each project, because we sort of feel like that's what we should be doing. And the service aspect of that is really kind of baked into our model and our team. We do that. We provide those types of services, not just for the families who are coming out of homelessness, but for a lot of the other people who are living in the other apartments who, while they may not have been homeless, they have been, having economic hardship and are having some of the same challenges, and some of the same solutions work for a broader number of people. So we do this work anyway, I guess is my point. So we want to make sure that we're committing to that, so that it's not just for the people who move in when the building is built, but when that household moves out and on, we get another family that will meet that preference, which I think is really important. And then the special population, that is those are other, let me think how to describe that. There are other funds that are available that encourage us to house. The most common example I can share is people who are clients of the Department of Mental Health, for example. The Department of Mental Health actually has a fund. They say, well, if you'll create 2 apartments for our clients, then we'll give you X amount of capital, build your building. And in exchange for receiving that capital, we agree to house their clients for like 30 or 50 years. And we work together on creating a service agreement to make sure that those households are supported. And we've also included these in a number of developments over the years, again, because we're mostly creating housing that are in the downtown areas. And by being in housing in our organization, folks are supported. So it's another thing where we feel like we should do this because it's great. And we've had some really good successful developments with some of those folks. There are a variety of different like special populations, but that's the one that we have mostly focused on. So we're really proud of that work too, because I know a lot of developers don't necessarily like raise their hands for that, because I think sometimes I'm assuming people think that might be complicated or additional work. I'm not really sure what people would tell you, but I think in our case, we really feel like it's a positive addition to have people of like all backgrounds in our housing. And I know I can say one of our buildings where we have a lot of folks that are GMH clients is right near our office. And I know our staff has all had some really special relationships with people, myself included, over the years, of people who are, you get to know them because they're around a lot, coming and going from their building. And I think it's a nice, very small aspect of the overall picture, but it's something we've always felt was really important to do. And I felt sure that we would probably include, 3 or 4 of those apartments in the kind of project we've talked about with you all too. Yeah. So these are the income limits. These are, let me explain these. So every year, one of the functionalities of HUD, the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, is they have a whole data and statistics department, and they look at average incomes nationally. And every area of the country is carved up into and I'm sorry for all the jargon, but I might as well. This is the Zoom to use the housing jargon. They carve up the whole country into what are called metropolitan statistical areas, MSAs. And you have no choice in the matter of what MSA you're in. So we're Salem, the whole North Shore in Eastern Massachusetts is in the Boston MSA. So, that this is sort of a HUD fact of life, but the challenging aspect of this is these are not median incomes of Salem. These are median incomes in the Boston MSA. So, you can imagine that if you're doing a project in Brockton, it's very different than a project in Wellesley, but they use the same MSAs. And, Gloucester and Marblehead are in the same MSA. So I just share that to say, like, it's one challenge of our business, but we have absolutely no control over it. So I don't think these are way off for Salem, but if anything, I tend to think they might be a little bit high. What we usually do is these income limits are directly correlated to the rent limits. And the way we address the fact that these are a little bit high for Salem is that when we create our rents for all of our projects, we usually use 80 to 90% of the maximum rent. We never use 100% the maximum rent that we can charge for each department. To give you a little bit of maybe a little too much detail, but we're very aware that we always watch this, but this does give you a sense of, for a single person below 41.5, they're considered very low income because they're below 50% of the area median income. And for folks below 24.9, they're considered extremely low income. So this can be someone who's earning, $700 a month in Social Security, or it can be someone working, a full-time minimum wage job. There's a range of folks who all fall in the same category for housing. Then you can see with two-person household, the incomes don't go up dramatically. They of course do a little bit, but these are the tiers that really apply to the types of apartments we've been talking about with with the Tabernacle community, assuming we would be doing a mix of studios and 1 bedrooms. That would mean that we wouldn't have any households more than 2 people, and probably most of them will be single-person households. It gives you a sense of the demographics, economic demographics, who might be living there. Next. So we wanted to be sure to mention how important sustainability is to us. So from the outset of when I started, we actually, it's funny, we have this picture in here. This is the first project that I ever worked on. This is 325 Cabot Street in Beverly, in downtown Beverly. It's for folks who've been in the North Shore for a while, you might remember the Mayflower Motel. Used to be kind of at the corner of Cabot and Route 62. And when I first started, the organization was under agreement on the Mayflower. And we had about 30 days to figure out what in the heck we were going to do to buy that building or lose the contract. And I had never done this before. So it was, if I know that they had another buyer in the wings who wanted to tear the whole thing down and build a Starbucks. And so it was good motivation to, like, 30-day trial by fire, learn about affordable housing development. And we, of course, saved the deal and built more apartments, there are 43 apartments. Their studios. This is a very similar project to population-wise to what we've talked about. But this building is also an extremely green building. It was our first LEED building. It was LEED Platinum certified, which is the highest level of certification. And at the time, it was the first affordable housing development of kind of the scale that achieved LEED Platinum, which we weren't even really trying to do. We just said, let's just make it as green as possible and see where the points fall. And we got a grant to do a solar array and all sorts of things that we did in this building. But we've learned along the way to try to, create really low energy consuming buildings, really good recycled content building products, really good quality products, so that we're not replacing stuff after 5 or 6 years. We care more about the energy and waste and water consumption than we do about the fancy certifications. So we have done some of the fancy certifications, but sometimes we do all these things and don't necessarily get certified. Eileen will tell you about a couple projects that we're working on now, and we're completing our first passive house building in a couple months, which is one of the kind of most aggressive green building certification programs in the world right now. And that's something that we're considering making kind of the standard that we built by. We have a couple of others that we've already designed to that standard. We're going to see how they all go. But assuming there are no major surprises that we learn kind of after the fact, I think that's the direction we're going, that everything we build is going to be built to passive house. It's really focused on low energy consumption. Next. So Eileen, do you want to tell folks a little bit about some of our new projects?
Definitely. So we put them in order sort of when we expect them to be under construction or completion. So Harbor Village, this is a project up in Gloucester. It's 30 units, 1, 2s, and 3 bedrooms. So there'll be, and most of them are 2 and 3, so there'll be a lot of families. It's right in the heart of Gloucester, right on Main Street. So it's an excellent location. It was sort of a dead spot in the middle of a kind of a lively touristy area, 1 block away from the harbor. And this is nice because it's not only providing some really sorely needed affordable housing downtown, but it also is helping the city by sort of knitting together these two, the east and west part of Main Street that had this, like I said, this vacant building in the middle. So it was a dead zone. The first floor has, so we've, first of all, it's being built in such a way that it really is, it has a nod to the the beautiful architecture in Gloucester on Main Street. So it's brick. It has sort of a historic look in many ways. The right now you're seeing the panels on the top upper left-hand corner. You're just seeing sort of the panels being installed. So that's prior to the brick being installed. The bottom is a rendering, not the actual picture, but a rendering showing you what the brick facade will be like. Then there are 3 commercial spaces on the first floor, because Main Street is very heavily commercial on the first floor, and then residential or offices above. So we wanted our building to really blend in. So there's this lovely, really light-filled commercial spaces. The units themselves, you can see an example right above that shows. I mean, that's one of our bigger units, but they're all. I was just in there yesterday. They're all really light, very modern. The upper floors particularly have beautiful views over the ocean. Really lovely. Open concept and kitchens. Like I said, all very modern dishwashers, disposals, and really, they're really beautiful on the inside. But the interesting construction is, as Mickey was mentioning, the passive house. So this is our first passive house project. It's one of the first, I think, in the state. So it's part of a sort of not really a trial, but we're in the first group coming out. So we were able to get a grant to help us with the passive house, because it requires a lot of coordination between the architects and the contractors. So our architects, Icon, are very familiar with passive house. So that they were very interested in creating this passive house building, but our contractors hadn't done that before. So, and passive house requires that the contractors get training in what a passive house building is, and they understand the technology, so that they really can make a concerted effort together to really ensure the building is passive house. So just to give you a few ideas, there's the idea is that the building, even though there are these heat pumps that can provide air conditioning to the units if needed, that the buildings will be so tight and so energy efficient that that the heating and energy costs and cooling are very, very, very low. So there's a lot to it, but it's extremely fascinating, and it just really is energy efficient. And that's sort of what we want to do with our, in the future with our buildings, as Mickey mentioned. And this one will be opening in June next month. We did a lottery. We're filling up the building. It's as you can see, it's a mix of 30, 50, and 60% AMI. We have 8 units set aside for homeless families. We have 3 set aside for also a special needs population. So we're super excited about it. We have a partner that will be providing a lot of services for our residents. So we think it's going to be a great building. We're very excited about it. You can go to the next one.
So I'll mention this one. This is those are the same image, same building rendering, but these are there are 2 buildings that will be 46 new apartments. The building you see in the pictures on Peabody Street, and its kind of sister building is on Congress Street. And this one will be starting probably in July, something around then, and be finished in late 2022. But you can also see this one's kind of a mix of about a third of the apartments below 30% median income, and the rest is 60. Next. And this one we talked about earlier. This is the 62 apartments and the 2 former Catholic schools. You can also see it's kind of a mix of 30, 50, 60%, and then some market rate apartments. And those are all kind of distributed relatively evenly throughout the 2 different schools. The St. James School will be targeted to seniors. This says 55 plus. I think it's actually 60 plus. And then the St. Mary's School will have a preference for creative professionals. So artists, but a broader definition of artists, sort of a more modern definition of artists. Both of these are also using state and federal historic tax credits. So a lot of the like really beautiful old historic character of these schools is very much intact. And you're going to see chalkboards in living rooms and really cool water fountains and hallways and all kinds of cool little stuff. Transom windows above most of the doors. It's just, they're spectacular things. I can't wait to see them all zhushed up with beautiful new windows and stuff. Next. Lafayette Housing. So these are Lafayette Housing and New Point are the project names, but these are 14 more buildings that we have, 11 of them that we've owned for a long time and 3 that we've bought more recently in the Point neighborhood. And they're all kind of dotted on the roofs on this map, but when we finish these 79 apartments, we will have renovated everything that the CDC owned kind of originally in the 80s and 90s. And when we finish these 14, we will have renovated 35 buildings with state and federal historic credit spread throughout the area. So we're maybe not as sexy as the new construction projects, but really, really important work, and doing lots of energy efficiency measures, lots of kitchens and baths, and all new mechanical systems, new windows, all kinds of stuff that's both for residents directly, but also like building systems. Next.
Oh, I can talk about MERRIMAC. So MERRIMAC is it's sort of a TBD. We are working with the town of Merrimack, which is all the way up on the New Hampshire border. Very small little town, very historic, lovely little downtown. But right off the downtown was an old, very contaminated site from an old like electromagnetic plating factory that the town got money to get it all cleaned up, and but wants to build affordable housing there. So they put it out an RFP, and we responded and got the award, won the RFP. So we were working with the town. I keep saying the city, sorry, the town, to redevelop this. This is a case where, which often happens with very contaminated areas, that it takes a lot longer than you think it's going to take to clean up. So the town, we thought would be probably in the ground already by now, but town's still cleaning up. It is almost done, but because of that, we have not gone ahead and finalized any designs. But the intention is to build fully affordable for families, and probably in more of a sort of a townhouse type of design, because it is a little bit more rural, a little more suburban than the Salem and Gloucester. But this is sometime in the future. We don't know when this will be.
And I think you all have heard about this by now. We're working on another cool project that we're very excited about in downtown Salem, kind of at the intersection of the Point in downtown. That is a 2-phase project that will include somewhere 45 or 50 apartments for seniors, all targeted at 30 and 50% AMI, as well as a commercial building where the anchor tenant will be the North Shore Community Health with a new community health center. This one, we're going to be going through permitting over the summer for this one. And I think that's it. I think we want to be available for any questions that you guys have. I hope we covered some more information so you have a little better sense of what we do, but happy to answer any other questions that you guys might have.
Yeah. That's really exciting to see in depth what you've been up to and what's coming down the pipeline. Very exciting. And at one point we had asked if it might be possible to have a chance to look at the Gloucester building before the tenants moved in. have a on-site, tour. Is that possible, Eileen?
It might be possible. It's not, there's often a very short window.
Window, sure.
So it might be the kind of thing where if there's that I might have to say, look at these are the 2 days, you got to come
Yes.
now or not, unfortunately. But if I can arrange that, I'd love to do that.
Great.
Yeah, when would that probably be, like in mid-June or something?
Yeah, we're expecting to start moving people in, but it's not like all 30 units will be occupied anyway at once.
Sure.
So sometime around the middle-ish of June.
Okay.
Yeah. Normally we would do a big ribbon cutting that's like open to public, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with that right now because of COVID still, where I
Right.
think we're going to probably do like a limited number of people and film it.
Yeah.
And, film some interviews with people that normally would speak at a big ribbon cutting, and then do a virtual tour. So
Sure.
that, because we could have like 150 people at something like that. We're a little nervous still about doing that right now.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think a smaller group, we could probably do that when the building is still empty, because it would be nice for you to see it. It's gorgeous.
It is.
Really.
Mhm.
And it's a really applicable, they're 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, so they're a little bit different style.
Right.
But you can still see like quality of construction and
Mhm.
some of the building systems and things like that. And
Mhm.
it has some cool public art on it as well.
Super.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Community room, so definitely, yeah, that's a good idea.
Great. Yes, you can absolutely give us, here's the date, or here are the 2 dates or whatever, and we'll bring a group up.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Great.
Other questions that we might have.
I have a question. My neighbor was calling to me through my back door, and I missed what a passive house is.
Mhm.
It's just a
Passive?
green building standard. It's like a
okay.
framework that we can use that kind of creates a standard for how the building is designed, and
Okay.
it's really focused on like very low energy buildings. So they're like so efficient.
Mhm.
You don't even really need a central heating system. We have like little energy splits in each apartment, because if you shut everything off, it won't go below like 60 degrees because they're so energy efficient,
Yeah.
even in the dead of winter. So that's kind of the idea of it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other
Go
questions?
above and beyond, what is required by the state. The state certainly
Yeah.
has a lot of requirements for the
Right.
health to build healthy, energy efficient buildings, but we like to go above and beyond, and because it's not only cost efficient for us, but it does create a really healthy environment for the tenants.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How were your construction folks? How did they feel about the training they received? They were required to receive.
Right. Well, we let them know in advance, so they
Yeah,
were.
sure.
And I think that, listen, I'm sure that there's some grumbling that I don't see, but, ultimately this is the wave of the future for them. So they're getting this like free training.
Yeah.
And they have, there's all these different consultants that come in and do testing on, that review the work that's going to be done, have to test, they do these blower tests for windows and doors and insulation and things. So, it's sort of in the contractor's best interest to understand what's going on. So I think that they've come to appreciate it. I'm sure they're less grumbly now than they were about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think they're probably, it's something that they can be proud of and put on their website. So
Mhm.
Yeah. And I saw a question in the chat about what's the cost of doing a green building. It varies. We did it for Cabot Street Homes, the Beverly building. We actually commissioned a study of like what was the marginal cost. So
Mhm.
a lot of times people talk about the price tags for this or that element, but we looked at like what's the price difference between this material and what we would have bought. And it was about a 5 to 7% cost differential. So it's not it is a cost differential, but it's not an insurmountable one. but I would say it's the impact on a project like this is more about, it's more work, right? We have to have architects that are competent in this space. We have to have contractors that are willing to take it on, and we have to be willing to take it on and kind of hold everyone accountable. So it's more, I think that's the difference more than the $1.10. In the long run, we look at things like, what's the payback period for some of these elements? Like, how long, over what period of time will we save on energy costs?
Right.
That savings adds up to what we would have spent. And each of those, probably for solar panels, it might be a 20-year payback. But for some of the things like additional insulation, the payback period is like 3 or 4 years. So if we're going to own a building forever, essentially, whatever forever means, it's no brainer to do this work. That's a huge part of it. We save a lot of energy over the long course of a project.
It's interesting. I was just up at Ingelosser yesterday, and it was really our first. Normally, when a building's under construction, the construction team of architects and me as the project manager and the contractor and various other people, we meet on a weekly basis where we kind of go through what the issues are and look ahead, and we walk through the building. But of course, with COVID, we haven't had that, so it's been all on Zoom. So yesterday was our very first on-site meeting as we started construction right at the time that COVID hit. And it was really interesting. We were looking at the windows. They have European style windows, which is really unusual, but it's sort of the way that these things are heading, and we were just talking about how incredibly solid and heavy and energy efficient these are. So it's really interesting to see the finishes and the product choices. They're end up being a really high quality. And I think that's one thing that people are always surprised about with affordable housing is they think of a housing authority, or they think of the old, kind of housing projects that of the past. But we're not a housing authority, and we're very highly regulated by the state in terms of, like I said, the quality and the testing and the oversight of these projects. And so the architects have told me, and then now I see it, that our projects are often built to a much higher quality than a market rate, because market rate project is often looks very nice, right? So it might have marble, or it might have a higher quality faucet or floor, but they can cut the corners. They're there to make a profit. They can cut the corners sometimes in the construction. Well, we couldn't, even if we wanted to, which we don't want to. We're held to this really high standard. So our buildings are super well constructed. We might put in a laminate floor instead of a hardwood floor, or a laminate counter instead of granite, but our buildings they last, and they're solid, and they're really well constructed, and they're super energy efficient. And that's a very, a big difference that people often don't understand about affordable housing, at least in Massachusetts. Can't speak for elsewhere.
I have a question maybe for one of you. This is Lou Amico. I'm Joe's brother, just to make it clear. That's what, but I know through my brother, you've been working on plans and everything, but how close are you with plans for Tabernacle? And are the plans kind of in the works for the proposal of what you have for Tabernacle? Is it pretty well completed as to what you're going to build in Tabernacle?
So we've been working with are we calling it the building committee? I think let me make sure I'm characterizing it correctly. The design committee, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm in a lot of committees these days in various places. I just drew a blank there for a second.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
We worked with the design. Well, we've had a couple meetings actually. One with the full congregation, couple with the full congregation, but then many more with the design committee. And I think the way I would characterize it is that we had a lot of consensus about we got to a place where we had a lot of consensus about how we divide up the space and what the apartment kind of systems look like. And what we've been working on for the past couple of months really is trying to get a contractor to take that plan and really price it out. And we've been working with a contractor, actually the same contractor that's building Gloucester, to do that for us pro bono. Something like that, normally we would go to a cost estimator for and spend a good amount of money on that. But they're, I would say, very, very, very close to, we've gotten some numbers from them. We need them to characterize it in a way so that we can understand the different components separate from each other. That's really what we're working on now. We got like one big number and we're like, well, that's great. Thanks so much for the number. But it's what we're really interested in is, what does this component cost? And what does this component cost? And what does that component cost? Because there are different strategies for paying, for example, for what would become church offices versus communal space versus the housing itself. So we're very, very close to having that breakdown. And I think what the exercise is for us to say, how do these cost numbers really, like, is what we've created feasible and affordable? And we of course hope it is. And if it's not, what adjustments can we make before we bring out a design that's like, we don't want to bring a design before the full congregation that we then find out was maybe a little bit too fancy. So I don't necessarily think it is too fancy. We just really want to do this like due diligence. And once we have that pricing and have a better handle on whether or not what we've created is feasible, that will allow us to figure out what's the best nature of the like legal financial relationship. You know, we've talked about a few different possibilities there, and we can't really finalize that discussion until we know the cost. And so I think we're kind of, we're very close to being able to have that conversation. And once I think the committees have and us have reached consensus around the kind of legal financial relationship and then revisit the design, then I think we would come before the full church and talk through those things together. And certainly there's a lot more work to be done to build out the details of the design. What we have right now is kind of a floor plan, layout, general massing, but all the like really fun stuff about what does the exterior look like. We haven't done any of that work. That's really kind of, we don't get into that until we know the kind of big picture layout. But we did, I think we got to a point where we have something we all really like. I know we do.
Right.
Okay. So I guess I understand now that you're in an agreement with Tabernacle that you both agree on the architectural plans. Now it's just a question of, can we afford to do this?
Yeah.
And then when you come
Well,
to that part, then you propose it to Tabernacle. Is that the way it goes?
Well, I think because of the committee structure that we've set up, I think it's fair to say that the design committee and us had consensus, but I think we all know that like whatever we propose ultimately goes to the full congregation, and that hasn't really happened yet. Not in that full way, because we feel like there's more vetting to do before it goes to the full group.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay, I was just wondering what stage you were at in the planning of the building part of it, and I guess you're really at the bottom stage.
Right, what I was just going to add was that, normally we did this a little bit differently in that we did sit down and have a lot of conversations with y'all to get a real handle on what you're looking for, so that we and then as Mickey said, brought it to a contractor to price it out to make sure it's feasible, and if not, to come up with other options that can work. I did speak to the contractor yesterday about this, and he told me that they put in like a lot of hours in, because it's a very it's an old building.
Right.
It's got a lot of history to it. It's got a lot of challenges because of the steeple and the construction, and we're talking about removing existing portion and then building on top, building anew. It's not not like just getting a vacant piece of land and building. So it's really they had to be very, very thoughtful, and they wanted to give us some real numbers, not some just estimates, but some real numbers to do the real work based on the conditions that that you provided us on we had that company come in and take a look at the building and do an existing conditions report. So they wanted to be really true to the reality as opposed to, coming up with a number that, sounds nice, but then when we're actually sitting down and getting a real project going is not reality at all.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I understand now. I'm good. Thanks for your input.
Thanks, Lou.
The question.
Mhm.
Any others?
Joe, did Lorraine have any questions?
She just said from the background, nope.
Okay,
But,
all right.
but I do know what some of her questions were, and your slide presentation answered those.
Right.
Oh, good.
Great.
Good. Yeah, it'll be good to share this with folks. So if they couldn't come today, they can watch it. And
Yeah.
I think we spent enough time on each slide that they can see them and pause if they want to think about the, read some of the details a little bit more than we talked about.
Right.
Exactly.
Linda, I'm
Yes.
delighted you're here today.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Not specifically,
Okay.
because I've been away from this and haven't really been thinking about it, but I decided maybe I wanted to get back into thinking about it. Hi, Mickey, by the way. And, it seems to me that you're making really interesting progress. And I love the idea of the efficiency, and I love the idea of the levels of space that are available to people who need services, people who don't. I think the building of a mixed community like that is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to pay more attention.
Super.
And I will just add as somewhat of a segue to our third in this series next week with Felicia. You're going to hear more about our youth development work in general. We have a couple of different youth programs that I won't spend time talking about today because that's what the session on the 20th is for. But we want you to understand more about our youth development work, how it came from, where it started, what the philosophy is, how the programs really function. You're going to meet more program staff who do that work. And I think I just want to mention that Felicia in particular has spent a lot of time working with a couple of real experts in the field of youth homelessness. And what we've asked them to do is do a scan, a real national and in some cases international scan of what's going on in youth homelessness. This is not an area that everyone is focused on. And if they are, it's often in a couple of little apartments. And we know that the need is real. There's hundreds of, if not thousands of homeless young people. And, we'll all be dead and gone if we do 2 units at a time. So we want to try to create more scale in Salem, but also we want to really get it right and look at best practices. What have other people been doing? And how do we make it really functional and cool and beautiful, all at the same time? And when that we're really working to bring that work together in the summer as well, so that by the time we reconvene around the financial, legal, all that issue, all of those things, really necessary things, we would also love to reconvene with a group that's focused on the program so that you can hear these folks' findings. And we've of course had some previews along the way, and it's really exciting. I know Felicia and I were talking recently about how really exciting it is, because we know that this what to do with our space issue is one of the biggest topics of conversation in all faith communities, right? So many churches going through this for various reasons. And I'm not aware of many who have done something. I'm not aware of any others that have done something quite like what we're talking about. So I just reiterate again how excited we are about the potential working with you guys, not just buying your site and tearing everything down, like I think is happening in some cases,
Mhm.
to do a really integrated partnership seems like so timely and has such potential beyond the scope of the site itself in Salem, right? And congregational faith, but maybe in other faiths as well, as maybe folks just haven't thought about this
Yeah.
That kind of takes me back to the fact that maybe I do have a question.
before.
And somebody asks you, do you have a question? The answer is always no, because you got to think of one right away.
Right.
You talked about services, one of you did, and having contracted with somebody in Gloucester to provide services to people who are going to live in that space. Can you tell me a little bit about what you have in mind for that? What kind of services, what sort of people you're going to connect with? Can you tell me more about it?
Alicia, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I think that's something that, so what Mickey had alluded to is that right now we've invested significant amount of time into really making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community. And so because we're looking at a youth and a senior population. So what I've been working with are two consultants that are looking at different models across the country and international to kind of see how this model is being produced in other areas. And so we are partnering with some local organizations like Haven Project, which has worked with homeless youth. We're looking at like NAGLY, which works with the LGBTQ community, which we have found has been about a large population of our young people who have come to us in our current building that works with youth who experience homelessness. And so we do have a strong connection with a lot of the organizations within the community, but we really want to make sure that we're really being conscious and thinking about holistic models in different organizations that really are meeting the needs of the community, right? So it's one thing to go into a project and say, this is what the community needs, versus really asking the community what they need and seeing what young people are there, right? And so 2 weeks ago, I met with an organization in New York called True Colors. And so they work with the same population. And it was almost amazing. I only had 1 hour to speak to this woman. And we have to schedule another one because the ideas, the information, the types of partnerships they're able to connect with, the different funding sources to make sure we can sustain this work has been really great. Right now within our organization, we have a person who does this kind of work as a case manager, but we're really thinking about what would staffing look like, and what things will be outsourced and what things will be keep in-house. But I think it's something that we're really thinking intentionally about long-term. So the answer is that we don't have an answer, but during the next show, you will get to see what kind of youth services we provide and then how we want to extend those and grow them. And when we developed Harbor Crossing, what we found were that other organizations were looking to us as a model to continue this work on the North Shore. So we had several organizations look to us to figure out how can they duplicate this model.
Well, I know there are partnerships like this going on, and I've been a long time involved person, former board chair, et cetera, of LifeBridge. And of course we do the service stuff, and we've done some partnering with Harbor Light to bring services into their areas. We decided some years ago that we were not best in class at building. We were best in class at services. And so we've made that partnership. And it's just, one of the areas that when you put these things together crosses my mind because I've been involved with it for so long.
Yeah, Harbor Light was one of the organizations that reached out to us to look at how we do this model to potentially use some of our best practices as well. So
great. We should all be working on it together. So
Right.
And I'm sorry, folks, I have to duck out because I have
That's
another
all right.
call, but it was lovely to see you. Please
Thank
join
you.
us next week.
That's right.
And-
We'll be
and Beth
together
will
on
be
the,
in touch very soon about once we kind of have our information together to meet with you all. Okay.
Great.
super.
Thanks, Mickey.
Thank
you.
Thanks very much.
Good to have you
Uh,
here.
Our next meeting is the 20th at 7 o'clock. And we hope you'll come and join us.
So just a reminder that I will be on vacation.
Right.
So Victoria, can you make sure you log in as host for that meeting and do the recording?
That would be the 19th or the
20th.
20th at 7 p.m.
Yes,
All set.
great.
Thank you.
Thanks
And-
very much.
Well, I can get that to you. And then the other part, Victoria, then is after this meeting's done today, can you get the recording up on the website for folks?
The Zoom recording.
Yes,
Okay.
because that's what we said, that we would record all these sessions, put them on our website for people who weren't here who want to get the information.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I could do that. No problem.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll see you all whenever.
Okay,